Have you ever heard of a battle so important, a victory so total, that a nation decided to reward its general with a house? And I'm not talking about just any house. I'm talking about a palace. Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. The story of how one brutal, bloody battle in Germany led to one of the most magnificent homes in all of England.
So here's the thing that makes Blenheim Palace so wild. It is the only private residence in the entire country that's officially called a palace. I mean, that title is usually saved for royalty or the church, right? So how on earth did a soldier, a commoner by birth, get a home with a name like that?
Well, the answer has nothing to do with royal blood. It has everything to do with war. See, Blenheim Palace isn't just a fancy house, it's a national monument to a general who looked the most powerful army in Europe straight in the eye and made them blink.
The palace was basically a giant thank you gift from a very grateful Queen Anne and the entire nation. It was for this man, John Churchill, the first Duke of Marlborough. It was built to forever remember his absolutely stunning victory at the Battle of Blenheim, which was a turning point in this massive continent-spanning conflict called the War of the Spanish Succession. Now, to really get why this one battle mattered so much, we have to rewind the clock to the early 1700s. Europe was basically a giant chessboard, and one player, France, led by the incredibly ambitious King Louis XIV, the self-proclaimed Sun King, was about to declare checkmate on everyone. So here's the quick and dirty on how Europe got to this breaking point. For decades, Louis XIV was just gobbling up territory, so a bunch of other countries formed a grand alliance to try and stop him. But then, in 1701, the King of Spain dies and leaves his entire empire to Louis's grandson. All of a sudden, this French superstate wasn't just a threat, it was about to become a reality. And by 1704, things were looking grim. French armies were marching on Vienna, and if Vienna fell, the whole alliance would probably just fall apart.
And you have to understand, the French army at this time was the most feared fighting force in Europe, period. For more than 40 years, they'd built up what one historian called a towering dominance. They were disciplined, they were professional, and they had this reputation for being totally unbeatable.
But here's the funny thing about history. That kind of dominance can make you arrogant, it can make you complacent. And there's a real irony here, because fast forward over 200 years to 1939, and you see a French army that was so stuck in its old ways that it was completely unprepared for modern war. It's a pretty stark reminder that no one stays on top forever.
So with the entire fate of Europe hanging by a thread, everyone looked to the Allied commander, John Churchill, the Duke of Marlborough. He knew playing it safe wasn't an option. He had to do something completely nuts, a plan so bold and so unexpected that it just might work. And this was the guy for the job. Marlborough wasn't just a general, he was a master strategist, a brilliant diplomat, a logistical genius. He was the glue holding the shaky coalition together against the biggest military superpower of the day. His plan started with a number, 300 miles. Think about that. That's how far Marlborough secretly marched his army, from the Netherlands all the way down to the Danube River in southern Germany. He moved 21,000 guys with incredible speed and secrecy, tricking his own allies, let alone his enemies, about where he was actually going. It was all about setting up the perfect surprise attack. And the battle plan itself was just as clever as the march. It was beautiful in its simplicity. Step 1. He'd fake a huge attack on the village of Blenheim, way over on the French right flank, to suck in all their best troops. Step 2. While they were busy with that, his main army would do the unthinkable, cross a swampy river called the Nebel, right in front of the enemy's nose. And finally, step 3. Once they were across, his cavalry and infantry would just crash right through the now hollowed-out French center, literally tearing their army in two.
On August 13th, 1704, it all went down. And man, did it work. The French fell for it hook, line, and sinker. They poured their best soldiers into defending that village, and while they did, Marlborough's army crossed the river and just shattered their lines. It wasn't just a win, it was a total rout. Vienna was saved, and the legend of French invincibility was gone, just like that.
The numbers alone tell the whole story. The Allies lost about 12,000 men. The French and their Bavarian allies, a mind-blowing 38,000 men were killed, wounded, or captured. It was an absolutely catastrophic defeat for France.
And that right there brings us back to our palace. A victory that big, that important for the survival of Europe, you couldn't just celebrate it with a parade. No, it needed something permanent. A legacy carved in stone. It needed a palace.
You see, Blenheim Palace was never really meant to be a cozy country home.
Its whole design was a political statement. Every single column, every statue was a piece of propaganda designed to scream, "We won," and to basically mock their defeated enemies.
And they were not subtle about it. At the main entrance, you've got a statue of Britannia literally standing over 2 French prisoners in chains. There's another sculpture of the English lion just chomping down on the French cockerel. Inside, there are paintings of Marlborough as Mars, the god of war. Even the chapel is all about him. His tomb is the main altar, topped with a statue of him looking like a Roman Caesar. It's intense.
Okay, but here is where the story gets really, really interesting. You have this incredible monument built to celebrate a flawless victory. But the actual war itself? Well, it was long, it was messy, and the ending was complicated. And that is the paradox of Blenheim.
Look at it this way. On one side, you have Marlborough's insane tactical record. The guy was never defeated in a major battle in 10 years of campaigning. But on the other side, you have the strategic reality. The main goal of the war, to stop a Frenchman from getting the Spanish throne, well, that didn't happen. The war just dragged on until it ended with a political compromise, not a total victory. And Marlborough himself, he eventually got fired because of politics back in London. He would go on to win more incredible battles, like this one at Oudenarde. But here's the lesson: all those brilliant wins on the battlefield couldn't, on their own, achieve the original political goals of the war. It's a classic case of winning the battles, but not necessarily winning the war.
You know, modern military commanders still wrestle with this exact problem. There's a U.S. military document that sums it up perfectly. It says that tactical success is only valuable if it helps you achieve your bigger political goals. Marlborough's victories were amazing, but they sort of became disconnected from the political endgame of a very long and very costly war.
So in the end, we're left with this fascinating paradox. Blenheim Palace stands as this absolute, undeniable monument to victory. The battle was a masterpiece. And yet, the war itself just kind of fizzled out into a compromise. So it really makes you wonder, what is a victory? Is it that one perfect, glorious moment on the battlefield? Or is it defined by the messy political reality that comes after?